Hi everyone, this is No Trace Trails. I'm Macy, and this is,
Hi, I'm Tori.
yeah, I could have given her a warning about that. Today we're talking about the science behind No Trace Trails. So we've so far just given some introductions on the YouTube, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about why we're doing this project and what we hope to find. So Tori, what does the current science look like for trash on trails? Is it something we have a lot of information on? Is it like an established data set? Why don't you go ahead and start by telling us, yeah, what the current perspective is?
Yeah, so one of the real reasons we're like, why are we crazy and hiking this trail and doing a survey on it is really there is not a lot of data out there about trash on trails. And so there are a couple like really cool projects that have happened that inspired us to do this. One of them was the Plastic Free Parks campaign, which was led by Five Gyres this past year. They had people across the country surveying trash in national parks, but a lot of this was like near visitor centers and near really high use areas. So not really the areas on trails that we're trying to target here. But I think really like part of that same movement, thinking about the things we bring into parks with us and thinking about how do they either accidentally or intentionally get left behind. And we're using a lot of materials that don't break down in the environment. So that was, go check them out. We can link different things in our video. And then the other project that I think is the thing that I've come across that is most similar to what we've done is Plastic Symptoms. And they, in 2019, spent 4 months hiking the Florida coastline and cleaning up trash along the way and using an app called Open Litter Map to catalog that trash as they went. So that was a beach cleanup. A lot of the research out there has been focused on marine environments and on trash that gets into waterways, and really not as much or really at all in backcountry areas. So as we're seeing more use in these areas, and we want to really open up access for anyone who wants to be out there, we also want to keep an eye on our impact on the environment.
So Tori, you're talking about these different projects that and trash cleanups that had happened, and obviously we're pulling a lot of inspiration from these things because it's really important that when you go into the outdoors, we act as stewards for the outdoors and make sure to maintain the space that we're using. But how is our data set different than some of these other data sets, and why can we use it scientifically?
Yeah, so one of the big things first, there like really hasn't been like on trails a survey like this. And we're also doing our survey in this really standardized way where at a set distance, we're going to do survey trash for 1 kilometer. And so what that allows us to do is not introduce our own bias into the data set, like, oh, we saw a bunch of trash here, let's survey it now, but rather try to survey often enough that we can say something about the whole trail while also that'll allow us to analyze some of those factors in a different way and really not introduce our own bias, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's anything you want to add on to that.
No, I really do think you said that perfectly. And the standardized data set is going to allow us to look at the data in a lot of different ways. One thing you kind of mentioned, it's like looking at the data across the entire trail. So the PCT is obviously like a really diverse environment. Like you go from the desert to alpine environments. And that's what's really cool about this data is that hopefully we'll be able to use it to compare across ecosystems worldwide.
Yeah, so thinking about what you were saying, Macy, with all these different ecosystems on trail, there's also lots of different use types on areas of these trails. And some, like we talked about last week, in Southern California, the trail is really close to millions of people. And so some of those trailheads get tons of use, whereas other areas in Washington maybe, or in the Sierra really are difficult to access and have many fewer people going through there. So I think we absolutely expect we'll see these changes in what we see on trail, but I think that will allow us to draw different conclusions about how people use these different areas and what are problems in these different areas.
You said that really great. And I think another question we've been getting a lot lately is, what if we find nothing? I do think it's unlikely that we find absolutely no trash, just because there are areas that are highly trafficked by day hikers, and there are areas that maybe are more pristine that we would expect not to find garbage. But no data is data. So going somewhere and seeing like, oh, there's no trash here, but we're also like 20 miles deep away from a daily trailhead where people probably aren't usually hiking unless they're a through hiker. That kind of says a lot about leave no trace education and just people packing out their trash in general. So yeah, no data is data.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we don't. One thing we did a Reddit Ask Me Anything last year, and some people were like, "You're gonna find so much stuff all over the place," and then other people were like, "You're gonna find nothing." And I think that's like why we need to go out there and do this surveys, because there is no data, and we can do it in this way where this is really our focus for the trip, and we can be really detailed about the data we collect.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's the first part of our survey. And then we also mentioned, I think last week, that we're doing the microplastic survey, which has been a really hot topic, buzzword, and necessary of a lot of focus over the past few years in science, because we don't know a lot about it and microplastics are everywhere. Macy, you've focused a lot on this for your master's. Do you want to give us an intro on microplastics and why we're looking for them out there?
Absolutely. So definitely expect to see microplastics on trail. I think a lot of people associate macro trash or just garbage in general and plastic with being the source of plastics, but we also have to consider that the clothing we wear and the shoes we wear are often made of synthetic materials, and those can shed on trail. So like people are hiking thousands and thousands of miles, their shoes are degrading, that's likely on trail. And there's thousands of people, so we'll probably see a high concentration of microplastics, but who knows? That's something that also hasn't been studied super extensively. And on top of that, microplastics travel through the air. So we might see plastics from atmospheric deposition. There's just kind of a whole world of possibilities for the looking at microplastics on trails, and there aren't a lot of studies out there right now. There's been a few released, a lot of them about recreation, just general day recreation, or there was a recent study about microplastics from ultra running, but again, we haven't seen anything specifically related to hiking. But that's, like Tori said, why we're getting out there to establish that data set, so we have a jumping off point in the future and for directions for future research to go. Tori, do you have anything to say
For
about
sure.
microplastics?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I didn't know a lot about, but have been like learning more recently from your work and from some other people, is like the atmospheric transport of plastics, and how it's like that's how we get plastic in like really remote alpine lakes. But then we also have this added input of like everything we wear in the backcountry, because it's super durable, is often made out of synthetics. So yeah, super excited about that and what we will find.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things to be learned about this. It's kind of like a wide open study. Like we don't have a lot to base it off of, and we're going to kind of open up this frontier, and hopefully it aids in other scientific studies, which leads me to what are the implications of this study, and what are we going to do with this data? So we've talked a lot about science today and how we can use this data scientifically, but what ways is the macro and microplastic data going to be useful? Tori, do you want to give us a little overview of that?
So we really want this data to be useful for a variety of things, both contributing to the science, but also hopefully thinking when we're thinking about like policy and management and our own actions as people going out on the trail. So one like statistic I'm just like personally really excited about, and I think will connect with a lot of people, is like, what are the top things we find? What's like the number one type of trash we find on trail? Maybe that will probably resonate with other people who use trails, because you see those things out while you're hiking, or maybe you also bring toilet paper or like granola bars out with you. These are just like some ideas of what we will probably see. And so I think if we can be like, these are the top 5 items that really can get people thinking about changing action and policies about how we related to how we manage these areas. So that's something I'm super excited about. What about you, Macy?
Something we talked with Dan at a Long Walk North podcast recently. He plans on hiking the PCT and was just talking about how he goes out on a hike and sometimes, sorry Dan to call you out, but sometimes you don't think about it and you tear like the granola bar wrapper or whatever and like spit out the corner. I'm sure so many people have that habit, and there's a lot of habits that we kind of don't realize. And if Tori and I are finding millions of these corner wrappers to different types of like granola bars or snacks, like that's kind of, hopefully we can use this data to educate people like that is a bad habit, or like maybe we should think more about this habit. Like it makes you think, like, do I do this? Like, do I accidentally litter in ways that I wouldn't think about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just paying more attention to how we interact with the space around us and how trash accidentally gets there or sometimes purposely gets there, and identifying that could be a positive thing. Another thing that's really interesting to me is looking at how we can use this data for land management and policy. So, like, could land managers situate garbage cans in a specific place that would be useful to mitigate trash? So, yeah, just identifying patterns can be super useful, and I think we'll get a lot of different things out of this data. But overall, I think education is kind of just the main mission. It's like everything falls under the umbrella of education and making sure people know what's out there.
Yeah, I think education and like starting conversations, just like,
Yes.
yeah, those are like these based on the data we're collecting. I think it's like good conversation starters about what what our actions are, both like on trail and off trail, and how that contributes to the waste problem that we have right now. So, yeah, conversations, education, policy,
There's a lot.
management. Yeah, we're trying to talk trash and
If you
the
see us,
other yeah the other
yeah.
thing, if people want to join us on the or like help do a survey while we're out there, we're gonna have our own data set, and then we're gonna have like a broader data set. So like anybody, if you're on the PCT or if you're on the CDT or AT or just a trail near you, um, you can follow like a couple easy instructions that we'll have up there, just like how to do your own survey, and we'll take a look at that broader data set too. So you can sign up on our website. We can link that as well, but definitely trying to build that and just like get people thinking about trash and picking up things they find outside.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, Tori. We really definitely want to have people involved in this survey, and maybe once it gets closer, we can do a video tutorial on how to be involved and get a part of that broader trash data set. And once we're together, we could make videos together about that kind of stuff. So it'll be fun. And now we're about 2 months away, so it's coming up quick.
Yeah, like almost exactly 2 months.
Yeah,
Ah,
yay. So,
yeah.
any closing remarks, Tori? Anything, last thoughts about just the science behind it? And I'm sure we'll talk more about this later too.
Um, yeah, I think we covered a lot. This is Mount Whitney. Excited to be hopefully here, not in too much snow, but we'll see how
That's
it goes.
actually Tori's personal picture. It was not off the internet. You just said that so casual. You were like, "This is Mount Whitney.
Yeah,
It looks beautiful."
definitely. Thanks. Yeah, I'm like, do I want to bring my camera on trail? Probably shouldn't, but it's fine. It's
But do I
fine.
want to? Yes.
But do I want to? Yes.
Well, that's all from us today. Thanks for tagging along again on this journey. And if you come back next week, you get to hear a little bit about trail prep and how we're feeling about it and all of the juicy details. So we'll see everyone later.